She walked down those stairs, and in one single moment, she changed the entire narrative. No press conference, no interview, just a dress. And somehow the whole world understood exactly what she was saying. Today we're counting down the 10 most powerful revenge dresses in history. Gowns that weren't just fashion choices, they were declarations of strength and confidence. From Princess Diana's legendary black cocktail dress to a modern royal who surprised the world just last year, these women didn't just get dressed. They stood tall and let fashion do the talking. And number one, it's still the boldest fashion statement any woman in power has ever made. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Every single woman on this list shared one specific problem. When words weren't possible, fashion became their voice. They couldn't call a press conference. They couldn't sit down and explain their side to the public. And yet somehow, with nothing more than silk and satin and perfectly chosen tailoring, they told the whole world exactly what they were thinking in a single evening. That's the real magic of a powerful dress. It speaks the moment you cannot and turns a quiet woman into a global headline overnight. These are the dresses the world still calls revenge dresses. Not because of anger, but because they showed incredible strength and confidence when the world was watching. 10 stories, nearly 100 years of royal history. Some of these gowns hang in museums right now. One of them sold at auction for a small fortune. Another one was hidden inside a suitcase in a London spare room for over 50 years before somebody finally opened it. So grab your tea, settle in, and let's count down from number 10, because the story behind number 1 is still the single most iconic fashion moment in royal history. Number 10, Queen Camilla, 1995. And okay, this one is fascinating because almost nobody talks about it anymore, but they really, really should. 1995. Queen Camilla, then Camilla Parker Bowles, was facing the harshest media storm in British history. Everyone expected her to hide, but instead, she walked into the Ritz and stopped the world. Why? Because her dress was a near-perfect mirror of the most famous outfit in royal history, Diana's revenge dress from just a year earlier. From the plunging sweetheart neckline to the multi-strand pearl choker, the message was clear. Camilla wasn't just stepping out, she was reinventing herself. It was the first step on a journey that would eventually lead her to the throne. One dress, one evening, and a reputation rewritten. But number 9? Now this is where the storytelling gets beautiful. Princess Margaret, 1951. Picture this. Post-war Britain, 1951. The country is still rebuilding after the war. Rationing is still a way of life. The establishment was practically pleading with the royals to stay modest while the country was still rebuilding. So what does 20-year-old Princess Margaret do? She picks up the phone and calls Christian Dior in Paris. Here's the thing though, this wasn't just any dress. Christian Dior had launched his famous new look only a few years earlier, and it was everything the British government was telling people not to wear. Enormous skirts, yards and yards of precious fabric, pure, unapologetic glamour. And Margaret chose it for her 21st birthday portrait, photographed by the legendary Cecil Beaton himself. The gown was a dream. Off-white tulle and silk organza, a fitted dropped-waist bodice embroidered with tiny gold straw, and delicate star-shaped sequins that caught every flicker of candlelight. And that skirt, oh that skirt, billowed out like something from a fairy tale. Commentators called it daring. The public called it the most beautiful thing they'd seen in years. Margaret didn't just wear a Dior dress that night, she told an entire country she refused to let gray, practical times dictate her youth or her joy. The gown is now carefully preserved at the Museum of London. And here's the detail that makes me smile every single time. When conservators recently restored the dress, they found tiny stains on the hem and loose beads dangling from the bodice. Historians say it's simply proof of just how joyfully the young princess danced that night. She wore it hard, she lived in it, and honestly, that's the most beautiful part of the whole story. But wait until you hear about number 8, Queen Letizia of Spain, 2018. This one hits different. It's basically a masterclass in how to survive a PR nightmare without saying a single word. Picture this. Easter Sunday, 2018. The Spanish royals are leaving Mass in Mallorca. The cameras are rolling. Everything looks perfect. Until it isn't. In a split second, the world sees a side of the family they weren't supposed to see. Queen Letizia steps in front of a photo op. A hand is moved. Words are exchanged. Even the king has to step in to settle things down. By the next morning, that video was everywhere. Letizia was facing a PR disaster. Whether it was a misunderstanding or a mistake, the video from the cathedral steps had made her the villain of the week in the eyes of the public. Everyone was waiting for her next move, fully expecting her to show up at her next event in diamonds and couture to prove her status. But instead of hiding away, she used fashion to perform a total character reset. 4 days later, Letizia walks into a seminar in Madrid, and she looks ordinary. No jewels, no custom gown. Just a simple Hugo Boss tweed jacket, black trousers, and a plain top. But here's the detail that tells you everything. She had worn that exact same jacket just a few weeks earlier. She recycled it on purpose. Think about that. A queen who isn't allowed to publicly explain herself found a way to speak through her clothes. She wasn't just wearing a suit, she was making an argument. The message was loud and clear. I'm here to work. I'm not a celebrity, I'm one of you. It worked. She spent the next few years leaning into this. Affordable Spanish brands, repeating her favorite looks, and choosing quiet professionalism over royal ego. The Spanish media even gave it a name, Estilo Letizia, an entire fashion philosophy born from one recycled jacket on a random Thursday afternoon. She didn't just change her clothes, she won back an entire country. But wait until you see who's next. Elizabeth Taylor, 1961, number 7. Now, I know we've been focused on royals, but Elizabeth Taylor was Hollywood royalty, and her story absolutely belongs on this list. April 17, 1961. Elizabeth Taylor walked into the Academy Awards completely convinced she was going to lose. Here's why. For 3 long years, Hollywood had been talking about her in every direction. The Academy had nominated her 3 separate times and passed her over each time. She had also come through a serious health challenge just weeks before the ceremony. She was sure she would lose again. So Elizabeth did something brilliant. She put on a dress so soft, so feminine, so unexpectedly delicate that it invited everyone watching to see a completely different woman. The gown came from Christian Dior, designed by Marc Bohan, pulled from his debut slimline collection. It was called Soirée à Rio, which means evening in Rio, and it was breathtaking. A pale butter yellow chiffon bodice, a moss green taffeta belt with an oversized crimson silk flower at the waist, a voluminous ivory skirt embroidered with tiny blossoms, and little insects scattered across the fabric like poetry. She finished the look with long white opera gloves and diamond drop earrings. Here's exactly what made that dress so powerful. One single look invited America to rewrite the story it thought it knew. When she stepped up to that microphone, the whole country softened. She won her first Oscar that night. She called the gown her lucky charm forever after, carried it with her for the next 10 years, and then quietly gave it to her trusted personal assistant in London in 1971. And the dress vanished. For over 50 years, the fashion world assumed it was safely in the Dior archives in Paris. Then, in 2022, somebody opened an old plastic suitcase in a London spare room, and there it was, perfectly preserved. A 50-year mystery finally solved. Now let's talk about number 6. Catherine, Princess of Wales, 2023. Late November 2023. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had just navigated one of the most watched news cycles of her royal career. The commentary was everywhere. Everyone assumed she would cancel her public appearances entirely. She didn't. She showed up at the Royal Variety performance at the Royal Albert Hall looking absolutely magnificent. And the moment she stepped out of the car, every single camera on that red carpet turned at once. She wore a dramatic Safiyaa cape gown in the most stunning shade of deep teal. The bodice glittered with crystal embroidery at the neckline. The cape sleeves flowed behind her like water catching the light. It was the kind of gown you designed specifically to dominate a photograph. Royal commentators online lit up within minutes. One of the most watched royal analysts called it her defining fashion moment of the entire year. Here's what made the dress so powerful. Kate didn't need to respond with words. She let the gown respond for her, with poise, with polish, with a single public smile. She walked into that concert hall, waved at the children in the audience, and delivered one of the most perfectly executed public appearances of her entire royal career. The Safiyaa brand, founded by designer Daniela Carnutz in London, specializes in exactly this kind of architectural glamour. Dramatic silhouettes, clean lines, quiet drama that photographs like a dream. Every element told the same story, from the dramatic silhouette to the carefully chosen accessories. All of it said the same thing. I am fine. My family is fine. We are not shaken. And within 48 hours, the international headlines had turned. Textbook, never complain, never explain, delivered at couture level. But the dress at number 5 went even further. Wallis Simpson, 1937. June 3rd, 1937. A small chateau in the French countryside. A wedding with 16 guests, no British royals in attendance. And at the center of it all, a bride wearing a dress in a color that had never existed before and would never exist again. Picture this. Wallis Simpson, the American woman who turned global history upside down, was about to marry the former King of England himself. Tradition said she couldn't wear white. She wasn't granted the royal title she had hoped for. And so she did something nobody had ever done before. She commissioned an American couturier named Membauché, based in Paris, to create a custom dress in a custom color matched precisely to the blue of her own eyes. They called it Wallis Blue. The dress itself was revolutionary for its time. A sleek, floor-length silk crepe column gown with long streamlined sleeves, a high neckline, a corset-style jacket, rows of tiny self-buttons marching down the wrists and waist in perfect little lines. It was the complete opposite of the heavy, ruffled, ornate royal wedding dresses that came before it. Modern, minimal, absolutely unlike anything the establishment had seen before. And here's a detail almost nobody knows. Mainbocher quietly stitched a subtle zigzag seam at the back of the neck, a hidden design element fashion historians have described as representing a healing motif, a tiny private symbol between designer and bride that nobody else would ever see. Here's exactly why that dress was so powerful. She invented something the traditions couldn't match: her own color, her own silhouette, her own modern American fairy tale. The gown became the single most copied wedding dress of the entire 1930s. Department stores across America reproduced it within weeks. Vogue built whole editorials around it. For one single day, one woman quietly invented her own royal standard, and the world copied her instead. Now we're getting to the really big ones. Number 4 up next, Princess Diana, 1996. December 9th, 1996. New York City, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The world's cameras are fixed on the steps of the Met Gala, and then she arrives. Just months after her official split, Diana stepped onto that carpet in a look that didn't just turn heads, it stopped every single conversation in the room. Here's the backdrop. Diana was emerging from the most public, painful chapter of her life. The world expected her to fade into the background. Instead, she chose this moment to reinvent herself. She connected with John Galliano, the radical new creative director at Dior. This was his first major couture commission for the house, his big debut, and he designed her a slip dress. I'm not kidding when I say this was revolutionary. This wasn't a royal uniform. It was an inky, midnight navy silk slip with delicate lace trim along the neckline. Over the top, she draped a matching silk robe like a Hollywood star from the 1940s. It was elevated. It was refined. And for a former Princess of Wales, it was absolutely unthinkable. But here's the detail that only came out recently. In a 2024 documentary, Galliano himself confirmed a secret. Diana ripped out the internal corset just before the event. She wanted it to be softer, more fluid, and less restricted. As Galliano put it, she felt so liberated. The cameras went wild. She finished the look with that legendary 7-strand sapphire and pearl choker, the same one she wore with the revenge dress, and carried the original Lady Dior bag, which the house had officially renamed in her honor just a year earlier. This dress rewrote the script. It transformed a former royal into an international fashion megastar. It launched Galliano's era at Dior overnight, and it turned a handbag into a global icon that still sells today. If her 1994 dress said, "I am strong," this one said, "I am free." Number 3 is pure emotion. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, 2021, March 7th, 2021, a quiet garden in Santa Barbara, California. And here's the thing about this one. 60 million people were about to watch it happen. Here's the setup. For months leading up to this interview, her story had been told mostly through other people's words. She was a woman who had been talked about far more than she had been heard. Then Oprah Winfrey came to a garden in Santa Barbara with a camera crew, and Meghan got one single evening to tell her truth in her own way. The gown was by Giorgio Armani, black silk georgette, a deep V neckline, a simple matching belt, long sleeves, a floor-grazing hem, and on the right shoulder, this is the detail everyone remembers, a single delicate white flower embroidered onto the fabric. Fashion writers immediately identified it as a lotus. In many traditions, the lotus symbolizes resilience, a flower that blooms beautifully even in the most difficult conditions. The accessories did just as much work as the dress itself. On her wrist, Princess Diana's Cartier diamond tennis bracelet. Tiny side stones from that same bracelet had been set into Meghan's engagement ring years earlier, making the whole look a quiet tribute. A Pippa Small triple aquamarine necklace layered at her throat, small blue topaz earrings. Her hair pulled back into a deliberately soft, messy low bun. Here's exactly why that dress was so powerful. Every piece of it was a visual answer. The black dress said serious. The lotus said resilient. Diana's bracelet said, "I belong here too." The result? 60 million viewers across 70 countries. The Fashion Museum in Bath named the look their official dress of the year for 2021, and it's now on permanent display, preserved for history. One interview, one black dress, one tiny white flower, and a woman telling her own story in her own words for the very first time. But number two is royal elegance at its absolute peak. week. Catherine, Princess of Wales, 2025. July 8th, 2025. Windsor Castle. The air in the Waterloo Chamber is electric because this isn't just another state banquet, it's the first French visit in nearly 2 decades. But every eye in the room is waiting for one person. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is making her first major state appearance since completing one of the most difficult personal chapters of her life. And the second she walks in, she sends a message that the fashion world has been waiting for. She chose Givenchy. Now here's why that's a genius move. For years, the royal fashion press associated the house of Givenchy with a very different royal wedding. But when Catherine's favorite designer, Sarah Burton, the woman who created her 2011 wedding dress, was named the new head of Givenchy, everyone wondered, would Catherine follow her there? She didn't just follow her, she reclaimed the narrative. She stepped out in a gown that was, quite literally, breathtaking. A floor-length silk crepon in the deepest, richest crimson red. It had these incredible billowy sleeves and side slits that transformed into a flowing cape every time she moved. It wasn't just a dress. It was a statement of regal authority. And then there was the sparkle. She wore Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara, Diana's favorite, for the first time since her health chapter began. In her hand, a crimson clutch embroidered with lily of the valley, a quiet, emotional callback to her own wedding bouquet 14 years ago. But look at the room. While Queen Camilla and Princess Anne were in traditional white, Catherine was a flame of vibrant red. Standing next to Madame Macron in cobalt blue, she visually completed the colors of the French flag. This is the absolute peak of diplomatic dressing. In one single evening, Catherine did 3 things at once. She announced her triumphant return, she reclaimed a global fashion house for her own wardrobe, and she executed master-level diplomacy without saying a word. One dress, a dozen messages, and a masterclass in power. But only one dress could possibly be number 1. Princess Diana, 1994, June 29th, 1994. The evening that invented an entire fashion category. Because before this night, nobody had ever heard the phrase revenge dress. After this night, nobody would ever forget it. Here's the setup. That same evening, a television documentary was airing across the United Kingdom in which Prince Charles would speak publicly about his marriage for the very first time. Millions of viewers were tuning in. Everyone expected Diana to stay home and let the broadcast happen quietly. Instead, she did something nobody had ever done. She accepted an invitation to a glamorous Vanity Fair dinner at the Serpentine Gallery in Kensington Gardens the same night. When her car pulled up and she stepped onto the gravel, the whole world captured the moment at once. The dress was by Christina Stambolian, a Greek designer Diana had discovered years earlier. Off-the-shoulder black silk, a plunging sweetheart neckline, an asymmetrical hemline that daringly stopped above the knee, a semi-sheer black chiffon sash flowing dramatically from her waist, and that famous pearl choker with the sapphire centerpiece, a gift from the Queen Mother on her wedding day. Every single choice broke tradition. And here's the insider detail almost nobody knows. Diana had actually purchased the dress 3 years earlier, in 1991. She kept it hanging quietly in her wardrobe the whole time, thinking it was too daring to ever wear. She had originally planned a Valentino gown for the evening until the details were shared with the papers early, so she pulled the Stambolian from the archive at the very last minute. This is exactly why that dress was the most powerful ever worn. A whole country was tuning in to hear one version of a story. Diana answered with a single dress. The next morning, every front page belonged to her. The designer herself gave the single most quoted sentence in fashion history. She said Diana chose not to play the scene like Odette, innocent and white. She played it like Odile. The dress sold at the famous 1997 Christie's charity auction for $74,000. And in 2025, a wax figure of Diana wearing this exact dress was unveiled at the Musée Grévin in Paris. She has been gone for decades now. The dress has never, ever stopped speaking. Here's what I love most about these stories. None of these women held a press conference. None of them had to say a single word. They simply let their clothes speak for them, and the world listened. So tell me in the comments, which dress showed the most strength and confidence to you? I read every single comment, and I absolutely love hearing your thoughts. If these powerful fashion moments moved you, hit subscribe for more stories that celebrate strength, elegance, and the women who wore them.